I was hired in the spring to be the caretaker of the old ranger cabin that sits 3 miles up the ridge from the nearest road. It isn't much. 4 walls of weather-beaten pine, a stone fireplace, a single narrow window that looks out over a sea of firs. The job was simple on paper. Bring supplies once a month, keep the wood stacked, make sure the generator runs, and log the weather. I'd spent a decade shoveling snow for a hotel in Aspen. The isolation of a mountain outpost seemed, at first, a welcome break from the constant bustle. The first week I fell into a rhythm as steady as the creek that runs hollowed through the valley below. I'd wake at dawn, the light spilling through the frosted glass in thin ribbons. The air was always cold enough to make my breath visible, but it never felt sharp. Just a constant low hum of quiet. I'd make coffee on the old stove, the metallic clink of the pot a small, reliable sound amidst the greater silence. After breakfast, I'd check the water tank, pull the gauge with a slow, deliberate turn, and note the level in my notebook. The water was always a little low, a reminder that any mistake could turn the whole place into a desert. On the second day, I noticed the fireplace stones were arranged differently. I'd always taken care to line the stones in a perfect rectangle, the way the previous keeper had left them. But tonight the central stone was missing, a small gap where ash had settled. I shrugged it off. The wind was howling outside, rattling the shutters against the frame, and the cabin creaked in a rhythm that seemed to match the storm's pulse. I built a fire, the logs snapping in a familiar way, and watched the flames lick the stone wall, the orange light dancing over the wood grain. The next morning the missing stone was back in place, as if someone had slipped it in while I slept. I could have blamed my imagination, but the habit of checking the stones every night was now part of my routine. I began to linger a moment longer, feeling the roughness of the stones under my fingertips, as if they might hold a secret I was missing. Days bled into weeks. The cabin's schedule became a metronome. Supply drop on the first Tuesday, generator oil change on the third Friday. I counted the days on the wall of the kitchen, chalk marks forming a tidy line that stretched the length of the room. I started noting small irregularities. The kettle would sometimes whistle a half-second earlier than usual, as if the water boiled a little faster. The wind would shift direction at exactly 2:13 p.m., always from the east, carrying a faint scent of pine resin and something else. Something faintly sour, like the aftertaste of damp soil left out too long. One night, after a heavy snowfall, I went out to clear the path to the road. The snow was deep, the bite of the cold sharp in my cheeks. My boots crunched, each step a solid affirmation that I was still here, still present. As I turned back toward the cabin, the light from the window flickered. Not from the fire, but from an interior lamp that I never turned on. The glow was soft, a steady amber that pulsed once, twice, then steadied. I stepped inside, the door closing with a sigh that sounded almost like a sigh of relief. The lamp stood on the small table by the window, its bulb warm, no switch pulled. I reached out, brushed the lamp's base, feeling the gentle heat despite the cold air that still clung to the pine walls. I turned the switch anyway, just to confirm it was still functional. Nothing happened. The lamp stayed lit, the glass dimly fogged from the contrast between the outside chill and interior warmth. I told myself it was a faulty wiring, a glitch in the old cabin's electrical system. I checked the circuit breaker, found it untouched. The generator's hum was steady, its rhythm unchanged. I turned the lamp off, but it remained stubbornly lit, the bulb's glow unfading. For the next few days, the lamp would appear in the same spot each night, glowing without any sign of power. When I tried to move it, it seemed to resist, as if the wood of the table held it in place. I never told anyone. The cabin was too far for a call, and the nearest ranger station was a day's drive away. I couldn't risk being seen as paranoid, as a man who imagined things in the quiet. The wind's pattern persisted. At precisely 2:13 p.m., the firs beyond the ridge would sway in a synchronized way, the branches brushing each other like a soft, deliberate whisper. I began to anticipate it, sometimes stopping my work to watch the trees move, feeling a strange familiarity blooming inside me, an odd sense that the forest was watching back. Winter deepened, snow piled up against the windows, the world outside turning white and absolute. The cabin's interior grew dim, the only light coming from the fire and the inexplicably lit lamp. I started to keep a journal again, writing down each occurrence in ink that left small, jagged marks on the page. The entries grew longer as the days grew shorter, each line a record of the minutiae that seemed to drift farther from normalcy. One afternoon, after a long walk checking the perimeter, I returned to find a thin layer of frost on the inside of the single window, as though the cold had seeped through the glass from the inside out. I ran my fingers over the glass, the chill biting my skin. I realized I could trace a pattern, a faint, concentric ring where the frost met the wood frame, an imperceptible seam that seemed to mark the boundary between the cabin's interior and something else. It was not the cold outside. It felt deeper, as if the air itself held a memory of something long forgotten. The days fell away. I stopped counting them. The routine persisted, but the weight of each task grew heavier. The lamp remained, its light a quiet companion that never faltered. I never found a logical explanation for its persistence, nor did I ever hear a sound that would convince me a presence was there. Yet the sense of being observed never left. No sudden scream, no shadow in the corner, just a steady, low tide of unease that rose and fell with the wind. I still wake at dawn, the light slipping through that old window, the frost still painting its delicate patterns. I still tend the fireplace, still log the weather, still note the wind's exact timing. The cabin remains, as patient and unchanging as the mountains themselves. It is not the thunder that shakes me, nor the scream of the woods, just the quiet knowledge that something, however slight, has slipped into the seams of my routine and will not be brushed away by a simple turn of a switch. And that, perhaps, is the most unsettling part of all. Story 2. The Long Night of 103. They say the desert eats the quiet. I didn't believe it until I started working the overnight shift at the Circle K off State Route 103, a gas station so far from anything it might as well have been its own town. The job was supposed to be temporary, a few weeks to save up for grad school applications. But here I am, 6 months in, staring at the same flickering fluorescent lights that first buzzed in my skull like trapped wasps. The manager, a man who called himself Bud, but whose name tag always said Bob, hired me because I looked tired. He was right. I was tired. Still am. The nights are the worst. Not because of the dark. Out here, the dark is just another color. But because of what the dark does to time. You lose track of it, the way a river smooths stones. My shifts start at midnight, end at 8 a.m. I drive the 7 miles from my studio apartment in a daze, crunching gravel as the station's lone diesel pump hums. The place is a relic. Peeling paint, a snack counter with expired gummy worms in the glass, and a vending machine that's been stuck on out of service since the Obama administration. I keep a notebook under the cash register, not for inventory. Bud/Bob never checks it, but for the strange things that happen when the world sleeps. The first week, I noticed the mirrors. The rear view in my truck, the one above the bathroom sink, even the chrome on the gas pumps, all seemed to show more than they should. Like the space behind the glass was deeper, the reflections slower to move. I told myself it was fatigue. The desert air here plays tricks, they say. Heat hallucinations even in the cold. Then came the music. It started as a faint warble from the store's ancient radio, which I'd left on the local AM station. Not music exactly, a voice, a woman's voice, speaking in a language that sounded like Spanish but softer, wetter, as if her tongue were tired. She described things. The red stone, the water that doesn't thirst, the man who forgets the door. I switched the radio off. It didn't pick up again. But sometimes, late at night, I'd hear a single note, a low, wet flute, seeping through the vents. I'd check the back room, the bathroom, the office. Nothing. Just the wind testing the windows. The customers help pass the time. Most are truckers, their faces leathery and their eyes bleary. buying Monster energy drinks and packs of Camels. Occasionally, a family with a dog in the back seat, stopping to pee and marvel at the desert night sky through the gas pump's flickering shadows. But there's one man I see often. He arrives around 3 a.m., every third shift or so. Tall, in a long coat for the cold, even in July. He buys water, always the same brand, the one with the glacier on the label, and leaves without a word. I've seen him look at the mirrors. Once I asked if he needed help. He smiled, all gums, and said, "You work here forever?" I didn't know how to answer. The vending machine broke completely last month. I don't remember when it stopped tooing snacks, only that it's been sitting there, its lone illuminated slot casting a sickly green light on the floor. Sometimes, when I pass it on my way to the break room, I think I see movement in that light. A shadow, maybe, or a hand. But when I look again, there's nothing. Just the machine's number, SN 417-OUT-OF-SERVICE. The numbers look like a countdown now. Last week I started forgetting things, small things, where I left my phone, the combination to the safe, bigger things too. I keep a photo of my sister in the cash drawer. I swear I've seen it face down, the edges bent, but when I pick it up, my fingers are clean. No fingerprints. I don't remember dropping it. This morning I filled up a trucker's rig and he asked, "How long you been here?" I told him 6 months. He nodded, glanced at the vending machine. "Place feels stuck, don't it?" I laughed, but he didn't smile, just paid in cash and left. The wind's gotten colder lately. It comes in through the cracks in the walls, the same low, wet sound as that flute. I keep the door locked now. The mirrors are darker too, like they're holding their breath. I don't know if I'll leave. The 8 a.m. shift starts soon. I've been thinking about the man in the coat and the woman on the radio, about the photo in my drawer and the machine's green light. I keep waiting for something to change, for the mirrors to clear, for the song to end. But the desert doesn't give warnings. It just swallows the quiet. I checked the vending machine one last time. The lights flickered. Maybe it was always flickering. Maybe I just forgot to look. The wind rises. I turn back to the counter. Another car pulls in.